They say it's not what happens to you, it's how you respond. What happened here 10 years ago set an entire community on a path of growth and renewal. I'm Joey Barnes, and you're watching One Day in April.
The tornado is coming, it's on the way, in the waterway, take cover.
I just really don't remember a lot about it, just being really scared.
It was eerie, just quiet, and you could hear people screaming.
Other than looked at the window, we saw debris flying around.
The tornado just came through and it's uprooted homes and businesses are gone. It just kind of looks like a bomb fell on Smithville.
A decade, 10 years. That's what it seems like for some people here in Smithville, 10 years. For others, like it all happened yesterday.
And I dispatched our police chief down to the lock. And before he got there, he hollered back on the radio to Town Hall, take cover, it's on the way. And at that time, I locked the front door of City Hall, and me and the two clerks in the City Hall got under the boardroom table. The thing that I remember most was the sound and the ground shaking, because we was laying on the carpet on a slab floor. You could feel the slab moving, and just the enormous pressure that was on your ears. 10 seconds, it seemed like it was over with. And then when you climb out, you don't see nothing but debris. Insulation, metal panels, stuff like that was in the way.
It was one of the most horrific scenes I've ever witnessed. It took me a while too, I'm not gonna lie. It seemed like organized chaos.
That's a good description
Good
for
description.
it. And that's all you can do in the early moments. You try to just grab a hold of what's happening and try to get organized, because you don't want to duplicate your services when you want to make sure everybody's accounted for, because at the same time, we still had active gas lines. They were still gas spewing in town, and you maintain the safety of the people involved, also the responders, and people get tunnel vision sometimes, and because they want to help.
What is going through your mind first thing when you think about your town? What is the first aspect, or the first, this is what I gotta do?
It was eerie, just quiet, and you could hear people screaming. You know, in the landscape, you could hear just people screaming. I was trying to call through to 911, and I did get through, get help. It's gone. At that time, I really didn't know where to start until I seen some of Dr. Monroe and his staff come running through the debris down Highway 25. And I knew then it's time to jump in action. As the evening wore on and nightfall fell, the shock set in more of actually what has happened to our town. What has happened to our town, that the big oak trees used to hang over the highway. You knew everybody. You already knew that you had casualties that had already been found, and you knew who they were. And, you know, it started a total change in my life that very second. And it was up to me to see how to move forward with it.
Does anything come to mind whenever you talk about those unsung heroes that maybe not everyone remembers or knows?
I'll start with the volunteers, our search and rescue team. Those guys, you never think about those guys. Those guys are all volunteer, and they came out and helped, and they're the ones that actually started the command post set up. You know, people open their doors to strangers, and everybody knows each other in Smithville, but people come outside to help, just to help take care of people, you know, the people, the feedings and stuff like that. Just show up. You didn't ask them to show up, they just came in.
And what about you, Greg?
You know, right after the tornado, you know, there were so many people who were, at the time, was searching for loved ones, and people were searching for that knew who was missing, but had no connection with them. But they were out there in the field, debris field, searching and looking. There are so many people who helped in that aspect.
Tracking the storm just ahead on One Day in April. Chief Meteorologist Keith Gibson joining us here on One Day in April, and we're in the First Alert Weather Center. Keith, you take a look at that map from April 27,
Yes.
2011. Nearly 30 tornadoes in our viewing area.
A lot of little icons on that map, and some of those early in the morning, some in the afternoon. So really, Joey, this was a full-on assault from Mother Nature. We had waves of storms, we know that, and some of these were early morning. Then 12 hours later, we had destructive storms again.
And Keith, one thing I've heard about this tornado outbreak, and I know a lot of people have storm anxiety, especially from this tornado outbreak, but this was a generational event. This is one of those things where the atmosphere is primed just right. All the ingredients come together for those big tornadoes, but generational, that means like once every, what, 30, 40, 50 years?
We had the big outbreak, the super tornado outbreak back in the 70s, and then we had this, 300 plus tornadoes, thousands of injuries, fatalities across many states, a multi-day event. Not just the 27th here, but you can see this satellite loop. That is the entire event. So this thing started out west in Texas, and we knew it was coming here, and it got here, and all the ingredients, as you mentioned, lined up perfectly to get the outbreak going in our region on that day.
And I know we see tornadoes now, but it's nothing like this. I mean, Mississippi went from having an I think then it was called an F5 tornado down around Jackson, the Candlestick tornado. And I believe that was late 60s, early 70s. Hadn't had an F5 until this event.
So we had that, and then we had two F5s or EF5s on the same day. One of those moving through the Smithville area. This is the radar imagery. This is 2 minutes before that storm hit Smithville, clearly depicted on radar. And then this is right after it hit Smithville. And I'm highlighting that bright circle. That's the debris ball. Unfortunate, but that's what we see on radar when these storms hit a populated area.
And Keith, that was 10 years ago. We thought radar was pretty good then, but now it's even better. You see that debris much sooner on the radar now.
A couple of years after this event, the Doppler radar network across the country got upgraded. So we are getting higher resolution data. We get different products. We can actually show you the debris signatures a little bit better than what we did back then. And now we can get the low-level scans several times per cycle. So back in 2011, we were getting one set of data every 5 or 6 minutes for the lowest level of the storm. Now we can get 1, 2, or 3, or 4 in that same chunk. So the technology has advanced, and I want to think we'll have a better handle on storms in the future.
And Keith, that technology advancing is just one of the elements you need to save lives.
Right. I mean, we can talk about storms all the time. It's always good to have that safe zone, have your severe weather action plan, basement, storm shelters, interior rooms away from windows, multiple ways of getting information. Just be prepared. We can have a storm at any time. It just takes one storm, and that one storm, if it produces a tornado, could cause problems.
And I've heard, one tornado on your street, that is your April 27th.
That's pretty much it. Yeah, one storm on your street, that's it.
And as always, you can keep it tuned to WCBI. We'll always break in for coverage when it's needed. Survivor stories when we come back. This is One Day in April. April 27th, 2011 was a day of storms. First in Montgomery County, then onto Choctaw and Webster and into Chickasaw County. Those storms came at night, and by morning there was loss and damage. Our Stephanie Poole has this story from Webster County.
Devastation, tragedy, and uncertainty.
God's in control. God's in control.
10 years ago, reality for families in Webster County turned upside down. An EF3 tornado tore through several towns, leaving destruction in its path for students, faculty, and staff at East Webster High School. It was a morning like no other.
What were those first images in your head when you did arrive here to East Webster?
When I drove up on campus and seen the devastation, I just busted into tears.
Patricia Avent works for the school's maintenance department. She calls April 27th a nightmare no one would wake up from.
The roof was gone, it was caved in.
Shattered glass, buildings destroyed.
All this is lost. The gym was demolished, the original old building was demolished. I knew there was no repairing it.
A school no longer standing. The idea of returning to the classroom was fading, especially for Ashley Haar, a sophomore at the time.
There were cars, windows busted out, trees were down everywhere. I know the sign was missing, it was miles away.
During the tornado, Haar didn't even know if she'd make it through the storm.
I just knew that my life was in grave danger. At some point, I didn't know if I was going to make it out here in that roar because it was so loud I couldn't even hear myself talk.
With a debris-ridden campus, administrators made the decision to resume the semester a few miles down the road at Wood Junior College. Classes operated with no electricity over a week.
It was a transition for me as a 16-year-old to understand that I was going to have to go from, the high school to a college to do classes there.
It was really hard on the senior class. Didn't get to have graduation.
In that aspect, it's just something you try to push for, is helping everybody.
A newly remodeled East Webster High School 3 years later, complete with a storm dome, the campus students and teachers would call home. A community coming back bigger, better, and stronger.
The stories of survival here in Smithville are bittersweet, as tangled as they are with the pain of loss. Here's our Cash Matlock.
I get emotional because that storm shelter saved my son.
It's been 10 years since Kelly Estes lost her parents, Roy and Ruth Estes. Her son, Gable, was staying with his grandparents in Smithville that same day, but in an almost miraculous turn of events, he was spared. This is the storm shelter that caught the attention of 7-year-old Gable just minutes before disaster struck.
Something told him that day to go get in that storm shelter, and I just praise the Lord for telling him to do that.
A quick phone call from her sister let her know Gable was okay. It wasn't until she began trying to find her way home that she knew something catastrophic had taken place.
Nothing was the same. It was all gone. You couldn't figure out where anything was.
Kelly recalls feeling a wave of relief when spotting her father walking among the debris.
I went to see my dad first, and he just kept saying, "Can't find your mom," and I said, "Dad, it's okay, we're gonna find her."
That feeling of relief didn't last too much longer. A few hours later, volunteers discovered the body of her mother, Ruth, under what was left of her family home.
We was hoping we'd find her and she would be okay, but we kind of felt like she was gone.
And the nightmare didn't stop there. Kelly's father, Roy, died the next morning at a nearby hospital.
The last thing I ever said to him where he was talking was, "I love you," and he said, "I love you too, baby girl." And I believed he was going to be okay. And like I said, he come to find out his body was just running on adrenaline.
Kelly's life hasn't been the same since that day in April. But among the bad memories, there were a few glimmers of hope. Hundreds of people from all over the region reaching out to help in any way they could and forging a new sense of family.
And I'll never forget looking up and just being so thankful. Why are these people out here? They don't know us, but they didn't care. They wanted to help, and that meant a lot.
Gable Estes is now 17 years old, but he isn't the only child in Smithville who's grown up with a story to tell.
For these 6 young adults who graduated from Smithville High School last May, the memories of April 27, 2011 are still crystal clear.
I had a friend, and his dog was outside on the leash, and I remember him picking her up and putting her in a container because like she had broke her arms and stuff like that.
As clear as they were 1 year after the deadly tornado, when students in Candy Tacker's English class wrote and illustrated a book telling their memories of that April day.
We looked at each other and looked at the window. We saw debris flying around.
Candy Tacker is now a 6th grade ELA and social studies teacher at Smithville Elementary. She rounded up Jabril and 5 others from the 4th grade class of 2012. Most of them hadn't seen the books they wrote and illustrated in 9 years. As they thumbed through the pages, each student recalled the pictures they drew and the thoughts they put down on paper.
Later on, many people came to help our town.
Many people had to move into trailers, and some had to move out of Smithville.
We had to move to a different school in the county to finish out the year, and this school was our rival.
They were so kind to us and accepted us with open arms. We really appreciate everyone's help, but we knew where the real help came from.
Even though our town was demolished by an EF5, we were still doing what we usually do.
We may not look the same, but we are still the home of the Seminoles.
You could hear the roar of many freight trains coming.
And feel the ground shaking. It happened so fast.
In the decades since the tornado struck, all of these Smithville Seminoles say they are proud of their town and those who stayed and rebuilt.
Everything built back really nicely. Our town has gotten better. We have a safe place for our community when it does get bad,
And all of them take tornado warnings very seriously.
We actually had a tornado warning in the dorm, and a lot of my friends are like, we're not getting up out of bed, and I was like, yeah, you need to. We're going downstairs.
The memories of that April day 10 years ago are still vivid in the minds of Mrs. Tacker's former students. They say they will carry the memories of that day and the community's resilience wherever they go.
A common goal just ahead on One Day in April. In Mississippi, high school football rivalries run deep, especially in Monroe and Webster counties. But when disaster strikes, everybody's on the same team. WCBI's Stephen Pimpo explains.
They didn't have to be told. They didn't have to be celebrated. They knew what they accomplished.
10 years ago, Bubba Tacker could barely recognize the football field he had called home for so long as both player and head coach of the Smithville Seminoles. Just inside of the football field, there are still piles of debris left in the wake of that EF5 tornado all those years ago.
Football is just one part of those things that just brought life to the community. People gathered, people celebrated.
In just 10 seconds, it was all gone. But it wouldn't stay that way.
Smithville kids are tough. They always have been, and that's something about them.
To rebuild their town, they had to rebuild the football field.
Everybody was sitting down out on the field with 5-gallon buckets, picking up rocks, glass, nails.
Just months after the tornado wiped it out, the Seminoles were back on their home field. Former running back Turner Sanderson says he can't remember who they played that first game. He just remembers how they got there.
There wasn't a school around. There wasn't a rival or an enemy around per se that didn't offer us literally the jersey on their back.
One of the school's greatest gifts came from Hatley.
Hatley kids are brought up to beat Smithville, and Smithville's brought up to beat Hatley.
The storm displaced all students in Smithville. For the kindergarten through 6th graders, it meant the unthinkable, attending school at Hatley.
Of course, they had banners up. I think they were all dressed in maroon and white, just to take care of those kids.
It was a season of goodwill that will never be forgotten.
It meant a lot that there wasn't a missed season. We have achieved something. We are rebuilding here. As a community as a whole, that's something to smile about.
In the days just after the tornado, Tacker remembers getting a call from an elderly woman in Tremont.
Told me she had something in her yard that belonged to us and was sure we needed it back. Said it was our scoreboard off the football field. Kind of bent up a little bit.
But still there.
Yeah, it's still there. Still there.
Just like the team, just like the town.
Do you think that Smithville should be defined by this tornado, or is it something different, something special that will guide them into the future?
Well, it should be something special to guide us into the future, I think, to let people know that we're not just giving up, we're coming back, and we're going to keep growing and keep working together. The whole town has worked together great to help everything get together and go. I think we're going to be good.
The people make the heart of the community, and the resiliency, and the people want to live here. They love it here. They grew up here. They want to continue living here and stuff. So I think it's the resiliency, the remembrance of what happened, the things, the improvements, things happened as a result of that, like we're in the dome here, the school, but yeah, I don't think it'd be defined as a tornado, but just remembrance and defined as the people want to stay here, to come back.
So many people have, in the past 10 years, that was involved there, have passed on. You know, just in a short 10 years, and to keep them folks' legacy alive, and to keep their spirit, community, being a part of our community, of this community, and continue to strive to move forward.
Folks here in Smithville know what they lost: their homes, their family, their friends, landmarks even. But what they did find was a spirit of community, a bond that moves this town forward. Thanks for joining us here on WCBI for One Day in April. I'm Joey Barnes.
For exclusive interviews and web-only content, visit WCBI.com.